trace it, cut it out, and then transfer that over. What is up, everybody? It's Autotech Aaron here, and welcome back to another nasty LUV build video. So if you guys watched the last video, we got the fuel system plumbed and we got this thing running on a base map tune, but we don't have a transmission in it. And I also have a little surprise that was given to me by my friends over at JEGS, which we're also going to install. But most importantly, we finally got a part that we have been waiting on for a long time, which is this, the engine block plate. So the story goes, I ordered this transmission kit from Speedway Motors, and I was just about to install it a couple weeks ago, and the bell housing kit did not come with the engine block plate. So I called up Speedway Motors, and they said, okay, well, we'll email them. Anyways, a week and a half go by, I didn't hear anything, so I called Holly, who was the supplier of the part, and they hooked me up. They got me the bell housing block plate, and now we can go ahead and install that, remeasure our throwout bearing clearance, and install the transmission. And I do have to make a transmission mount, but after we get that in, fill it up with fluid, and get a drive shaft made, this thing will be running and driving. So that's really exciting. We got a lot of stuff coming your way in the next couple of weeks, and this truck's gonna come together faster than you guys can believe, so strap in and get ready for this thing to get built. So we got the truck up in the air here. We're about ready to take the flywheel off and install that engine block plate, but our friends over at JEGS sent us a part I'm very excited to install because we have a gross, disgusting stock starter that I had to borrow from a friend, and this is the solution to that issue here. It is this beautiful unit right here. This is a JEGS Performance LS mini starter. The part number is 10043. This thing is pretty tricky because it is fully clockable, perfect for custom builds. And if you want to buy this or any of the other great products that JEGS has to offer, be sure to check out my link tree. I'll put it down in the description of this video. But without further ado, let's get this thing installed on the engine. So looking at the instructions here, it asks for a 20 thousandths to a 25 thousandths wire gauge to measure the clearance. I do not have any wire gauges, all I have is feeler gauges, and it just so happens that this pocket screwdriver right at the tip is 20 thousandths. So we'll go ahead and use this as our gauge. If it goes in too far, then we have too much clearance. Of course, before we can install the new one, we gotta take out this disgusting old one, just two 15 mils. I already took off the wire connections. We can install our new one and check the clearance. There we go. And now we can install the starter with the new hardware. All right, I'm gonna go grab a torque wrench and we're going to torque this to spec. And then I'm gonna pull this out so that we can measure our clearance. Now this is definitely not the preferred method, but I mean, that seems to be almost exactly the clearance that we need. So I don't think we're gonna have to put a shim in here. The instructions said that you probably wouldn't, but it's always good to double check, even though this isn't super accurate. So now that that is on, let's get this flywheel off so we can put on our block plate. All right, there we go. Now let's go get our block plate, put it up here, and I gotta read through the instructions again, and we'll get it bolted up and put our flywheel back on and torque it down. So before we install it, I'm gonna come over here and measure the thickness of this. It is about 110 thousandths of an inch, or 0.1. And then we'll go over here to our shims. These are all the ones that were on it before, and so we'll have to add about 100 thousandths worth of shims. So we'll measure these and figure out how many equals 100 thousandths and put those on there, and that should get us close since we did already measure this before. So measuring two of these shims, they're about 90 thousandths, which if I added another one, that would probably be too close. I believe our clearance was like 80 thousandths last time, so that should be fine. We'll add these two in there. Of course, we will double check that, but now we can put on our block plate. We'll put on our clutch assembly and then remeasure, make sure that that is correct. All right, so let's go ahead and get this block plate on there, just like that. There we go. Now we can put this thing back on there. Put our ARP fasteners back in. All right, so I'm gonna spray this off with some brake parts cleaner because it did get pretty dirty. And then we will put our clutch disc on with our alignment tool and then put the pressure plate on and torque that down as well. Now let's go ahead and get this on there. This goes up here. I believe just like that is where we had it before. All right, with the clutch fully installed, let's put on our bell housing and double check our throwout bearing clearance. All right, up next, we got to put this bell housing on there just like that. There we go. Now I don't have any one good way to do this other than with this flat piece of metal. 3125. So we'll go off of 3125. So I use this flat piece of steel to measure in there, and I got a pretty good measurement, about 3.125. And then we measured with that flat piece of steel from the surface of the throwout bearing to this mating surface here, and it was 3.044, which is 80 something thousandths of clearance, which is good. The spec is 50 thousandths to 100 thousandths clearance. So we can go ahead and install this transmission now. So let's get that bell housing back off the engine, put it on the front of here, and then put on our throwout bearing and then install it all in the truck. So next thing we have to do on the truck is make a patch panel for this hole right here. We don't want two gaping holes in the floorboard. We only want one. This is for the new location for the shifter, and we got to get rid of this old one. So I'm going to try to make a patch panel and we'll see how it turns out. So a very simple process. We just take a piece of cardboard, trace it, cut it out, and then transfer that over to our piece of metal here. Now let's get this cut out. All right, so here we have our patch panel here, and it does fit. I mean, I probably could have left it a little bit bigger. We're gonna have some gaps to fill there, but nothing atrocious. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep this metal, and then we'll get this thing tacked in and then just spot weld it all the way around until it's fully sealed up. We'll go underneath, put on some primer and some paint, and maybe some undercoating later on. I might not even record that, but so let's go ahead and get this thing ready to go in. Now with that all prepped up, we'll get our piece in and start tacking it in. All right, there we go. It is ground down. Now I'm gonna clean this up, scotch spread it a little bit, and throw some paint on there. Now we're just priming this up. This is some self-etching primer. All right, now time for some white paint. And just like that, it is painted. It's not perfect, but it is good for what I wanted. I just wanted that hole filled, and I didn't want it to be absolutely atrocious. So that's good enough for me, and this is our new shifter hole there. I might still have to make that bigger. But anyways, let's work on getting that transmission installed now. So with that being done, we are now able to install the transmission. I don't know if it's gonna fit super well with the bell housing on. Last time I was test fitting it, we already had the bell housing on the engine and we were test fitting the transmission that way. We have to install it assembled like this just because if we have the throwout bearing on the end of the transmission, it will not fit through this hole in the bell housing. I'm sure there's a way I could do it, but we're gonna attempt first to install it as one whole unit and see how that goes. After we get the transmission in, I will get the clutch line hooked up and we will get that bled, and at that point we will be ready for a drive shaft and this thing will be ready to run and drive. So very exciting stuff. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get this transmission installed. Nope.
We're just hitting lower now.
Let's just try doing it with the bell housing.
Oh, there you go. Oh, perfect. Sweet. Okay, we are in. Okay, that went smoother than I was expecting.
Yeah.
So now with the transmission in, we need to work on making our mount, and we're just quickly test fitting the shifter right here. And turns out the shifter boot is hitting the trans tunnel, so we're gonna pull the shifter back off and cut it out a little bit more so we can have some clearance to that boot there.
All right, so as you guys saw, the transmission is in. It is still not final mounted yet. I need to go get some steel from the steel yard to make a cross member, but we have our shifter in, and this is a pretty good feeling because we can shift through the gears in this thing now. Very exciting moment. And off camera, I did go ahead and install the clutch line, fill it with fluid, and bled it, and now we have a working clutch. Also very exciting. So once we get a drive shaft for this thing, it is going to be a running, driving truck. And then all we have to deal with is the cooling system and the rest of the wiring, tidy all this up, get it all tucked up in there, and get our battery mounted in the back of the truck. All right, so that is everything that I have for you guys today. The transmission is in and mounted to the engine. It's not mounted to the chassis yet, but we will get there in the next video. And we do now have a working clutch. This thing is starting to come together really quickly, and you're definitely not going to want to miss it. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. And guys, let's get to building nasty love.